This is High School Not So Much a Musical, a podcast that takes you on a ride through the peaks and valleys of a high school journey. Here are your presenters, Nitin Jaladanki and Ayush Agarwal. Hello everybody and welcome back to High School Not So Much a Musical. We have a very special episode today. We're joined with Jack, who is somebody you probably know from The Circle. I mean, millions of people have seen him. So Jack, could you just talk about your time in reality TV, your presence on The Circle, and your time out of The Circle, and who you are, just your whole background as a whole?
Yeah, so just to give a quick synopsis, I guess, I'm Jack, I'm 21 years old, I'm currently a college student at the University of Chicago. I grew up in Connecticut, went to high school, everything obviously, which not too long ago. And I grew up just a big fan of like reality TV shows like Survivor, Big Brother. When I first watched The Circle when it came out at the beginning of 2020, which feels like so long ago now, I watched season 1. I was like, hey, this looks like it would be a great experience. I'm obviously still in college at this time. This was my sophomore year. I was like, hey, this looks like a fun thing to do. So I sent in an application. One thing, I really had no expectations when I applied because it's such a competitive process. I kind of compare it to like college applications where, I've applied to like Survivor, for example, and I didn't really have any luck over there, but then all of a sudden you apply to this different show and there's something about you that just stands out. So each kind of show is kind of like a different, college where they'll have certain things that they prioritize, certain things they like, and sometimes it's just a good fit. So I took like the first call for like one of the casting people called me and just got to know me, and then one thing led to another, a couple of interviews down the line, and before I knew I was on the show, which I flew out for in September of 2020. I was on season 2. We filmed season 2. Season 2 I got back on Halloween of that year actually, but the show didn't come out until April of 2021, April of this year. So there was that sort of like weird, 5-month period where I had already filmed the show, but it was just like big secret. It hadn't come out. So it was like this thing in the back of my mind that I knew was like going to be a crazy experience, but nobody else really around me, save me, like a few close friends and like my family, knew what was going to happen. So I just kind of went back to like normal college life. Tried to just enjoy that time before everything kind of blew up or whatever, however you want to say it. But then the show came out in April. It aired from April to May. I had a lot of fun watching it back. Even as like a fan of the show, it's just a lot of fun to watch. And so I was still in school at the time, but we were remote. So I came out to LA in May, and I was here all the way to the end of September. Just living life out here, getting to know people, trying to make connections, trying to like see if I could get my foot in the industry a little bit more. Even before the show came out, my long-term goal is to kind of work in like the management side of the entertainment. So either like an agent or like a talent manager. So just getting to know people here in that space and seeing what ultimately I could do. But also, being in LA as a 21-year-old is a lot of fun. So I'm really just trying to live life to the fullest. And then in September, back to school. But now I'm on, winter break. We're actually remote for the next few weeks. So I'm out in LA again for a little bit, just trying to, catch up with people, get the lay of the land, and just, see what I ultimately want to do. But I'm still living that college life, and just seeing where life takes me, I guess. I kind of go with the flow, but.
You talked about like the importance there of building connections, and that's something I think a lot of high schoolers tend to not understand until, they finally grow up, they get into college and they realize, oh wait, how do I get these internships? Industries like Bollywood, Tollywood, because of all the nepotism that exists, and it's more about like not what you know or how good you are, but who you know. But as you mentioned there's also like the application processes which allow, common people to gain a foothold in the industry in shows like The Survivor and The Circle. So if you could talk more about the application process you essentially took, because obviously for college admissions and the application process there, you have like the different parts, like the essays, the letter of recommendations, the extracurriculars, the grades, the SAT scores, etc. But could you talk a little bit about what the application process was like and trying to enter like reality TV shows?
Yeah, so for The Circle, I could speak to the whole thing. So The Circle is it's pretty similar application process to a lot of other reality TV shows. The first step, anyone can submit. You shoot like a 1-minute video. So I literally just took my phone, and just like selfie style, just went on a rant for like 1 minute. And then you answer some like written questions, you know, like what would your strategy be? Like, what do you think makes you unique? Stuff like that. And then if they're interested, you know, they'll call you, they'll get to know you, and then they'll set up, you know, a few interviews. So you'll interview with they sort of delegate the casting, and most shows do this. The network or the show itself will like outsource the casting to like I guess professional casting directors, people like that who are independent from the network. So they'll be the ones going through all the application videos and giving you the first initial calls. And then if they like you, they'll kind of package they'll take like the audio from the interview and they'll combine it kind of with like pictures, videos of you, and send it over the network. And then if the network likes you, then they will, you know, they'll move you to the next step. You'll do an interview with the producers of the show. And then eventually, like for the Circle, you'll be talking to some of the Netflix executives, because the production for the show it's its own production company. It's like a British production company. Well, and the rights to like own the show were bought by Netflix. So the production company does kind of the whole thing themselves and tries to make like the best product that they can. But at the same time, they have to like get Netflix approval on like, you know, who does Netflix think is gonna like stand out on screen? Like who does so Netflix gets their say on like who gets cast. So you kind of have to deal with, you know, the initial casting people. Then you have to kind of appeal to yourself to the production team of the show itself. And you also kind of need to get Netflix's blessing to be on there. So it was just a whirlwind. There was a lot. I mean, they do like background checks, everything like that, because they want to make sure you're like, you know, of sound mind to go on there. You're not going to do anything like crazy. But yeah, and then like you said with the whole connection thing though, like that is a great point. Connections are so crucial. But to me, I will say, I think it's sort of like you have a certain amount of like connection capital, right, in the entertainment industry, or just like general entertainment industry, where I feel like there's some people who just like love to network, love to connect, like, and sometimes it works for them, but for me, it's like I like to connect in a way that feels like genuine to me, and like network in a way that feels genuine. Like, sure, I'll think of like, oh, if I'm gonna go hang out with someone, like maybe we can collaborate on like career stuff. In the entertainment industry, that's especially true because pretty much everyone out in LA is like kind of tied into that. But at the same time, it's like maybe this person could do something for me, but if I don't want to like hang out with them authentically, like then it just feels kind of disingenuous. So there's that balance there. But like you said, social capital, like networking, super important. A lot of different ways to go about it, but it's going to be hard to like really, you know, find yourself in a successful position, whether it's like in your career or whatever, if you're not putting the time in like socially.
Yeah. Like, so the previous episode we did that was released a couple of days or that before this podcast was with a child actor who was on Disney Channel or he was on the show Mighty Men. I'm pretty sure you've heard of it. Yeah, he was like Alan. His name's Devin Lewis now. He's not an actor anymore, but like he auditioned for this show or the show Mighty Men when he was like 13, and we talked to him about the whole audition process. And obviously we just heard about your audition process, and there were some differences because like, you know, he was like 12, 13 years old. Yeah. It was from Disney Channel. Like yours, or when you auditioned for the Circle, you also had to get like approval from Netflix themselves. They would be like, oh yeah, I think, you know, he would look good on screen as well. So there's obviously that, but aside from that, like you also have like a life outside of like, you know, acting on the Circle. Like when we first reached out to you, we did a little bit of research, and we found out that you were in college, and you were majoring in astrophysics and economics at the University of Chicago. Yeah. And I feel like most of the people like watching or listening to this podcast, they know you from the Circle. Mm-hmm. But if you could talk a little bit, you know, about what you're doing in college, like why you chose astrophysics and economics, like that'd be great.
Yeah, so my major is business economics. I kind of was set on doing that from the jump when I first entered school. I just, like I said, even before the show, I kind of wanted to end up in some sort of like, you know, talent management. Initially, I thought that was going to be kind of in the sports realm. Now it's sort of moved over to like entertainment and stuff because that's where I have more connections. And, you know, I didn't necessarily want to study, you know, management or like sports management in college because I felt like it was a little too niche. Whereas I felt like business economics has a lot of versatility. So, you know, you can get a business degree and you can go to a lot of different fields. So that's kind of what I went into, business, which I think business is pretty interesting. It's, like I said, it's applicable to everything. the economics portion of it, like I don't love like the math stuff, but I do kind of like, you know, the psychology of like why do people buy certain things, why do certain things like gain value, appreciate value, things like that I think are pretty interesting, like the behavioral side of things. And then my school has like a lot, like several core requirements, one of which is like, you know, there's some science requirements, and I took this class sort of about our solar system, I guess you would say. And as I was studying it, it wasn't like, I thought it was cool, but I didn't think it was like particularly interesting. But as I was studying for the final, I was studying, I came across like this topic called this thing called the Oort cloud, which is this like distant like theoretical cluster of like asteroids. I won't go into like boring details, but basically like most of the comets, like asteroids we see in our solar system, are like being pushed in from that by some like distant gravitational entity that like we don't like know what it is, but we know it exists because that like that's how the gravity must work, whatever. And I was like that's pretty cool, like to think that there's something out there that we have no idea what it actually is, but like it has to exist for all this stuff to work. I was like, I thought that was pretty interesting. So then I like looked into like the astronomy and astrophysics minor at our school, and it's honestly like it's not too demanding. So we do quarters, so we have 3 quarters a year. So in total, you'll do 12 quarters by the time you finish college. And the astro minor is only 5 classes. So if you took one class in fewer than half of the quarters there, like you're getting a minor in astrophysics, which I thought was pretty interesting. And my issue with like the major at my school is a lot of times it's really hard to get the classes you need, because the business economics major is relatively new. It just used to be economics. So a lot of the business classes, they'll only have like one class or one professor, but there's so many kids now doing this major that there's a lot of demand and not a lot of supply. So with astronomy and astrophysics, I found myself, I was always kind of able to get a class. So it was just kind of an easy like class to add on to my schedule. And I don't plan on like doing anything with astronomy or astrophysics. I'm not particularly like knowledgeable in it. I kind of just finessed my way through it. But I did think it's definitely an interesting thing to think about. I think like philosophically too, it's cool to think about space and just like imagine our place in the world, because there's so much out there. And then also from like a you know, job marketing perspective, business economics is like the most common major at our school. So to do something that sets you apart sort of from your peers, or something that like diversifies your skill set, I think is also important. So, you know, when you say like astrophysics, people are like, oh, like holy crap, like are you like a rocket scientist? I'm like, I like barely know anything. Like I could talk about like the solar system a little bit, or like the Oort cloud, but that perception that it's like something really interesting, I think helps you kind of market yourself. And actually, on to that point, when I was applying to the circle, I was like, yeah, my major is like business economics, but I'm currently in the middle of like doing astronomy, astrophysics minor. And they were like, astrophysics? Like, you must be so smart. I was like, totally, yeah, like definitely super smart. And then you kind of pivot, like with the circle, I was like, yeah, like that. I'm like, because when you're applying to, especially like reality TV, and I think this is probably a big difference too from your last interviewee, because if it's scripted TV, you know, you're auditioning, you're acting, like you have to fit the role. Reality TV, like I was never trying to be anything I wasn't. I was just being myself, and I do think you have to sort of amplify the best or the most like appealing parts of yourself for TV. But for me, I was saying I'm gonna catfish as this like, you know, cute little sorority girl that everyone's gonna like trust and kind of underestimate. But at the same time, like I'm a huge fan of these shows, so I feel like strategically, I'm gonna like fully bring it. Like I felt like I was gonna be one of the best strategists, you know, the show had seen. And so adding sort of that astrophysics component, they loved it, because they're like, oh, now you just seem like even smarter than, you know, you are. And I was like, yeah, like sure. So you got to amplify those sort of things.
So I think that you've given us like a really good overview of your background and life before the circle. So for the people who are watching who don't know what the circle is, could you explain what the circle is, your role on the circle, your whole journey? Because you started off as Emily, but then you got eliminated, and then you got to work with another person on like another profile. So could you just explain what the circle is and the whole journey that you took through it?
Yeah, so The Circle is a Netflix reality show. I guess it's touted as like a social media competition. So a bunch of different players move into the same apartment building, but everyone's in separate apartments, so you don't see each other throughout the duration of the game. And you're able to interact through like this faux social media network called The Circle, where you can like you chat with the other players. You'll have like group chats with the other players. You'll play like, I guess there's sort of like get to know you games that like, you know, basically the whole thing is about your relationships with other players and gaining popularity either through like I said, group games or private discussions. And then each round, there's like strategy because everybody has to rate each other. Essentially, you can rate people however you want. But generally, you rate the people you trust the most towards the top, and the people you don't really trust or don't really want around at the bottom. And then the people with the highest average like cumulative rating each round get to exercise the power to remove someone from the game. So over time, people are removed from the game, and once you reach it to the final five, you all rate each other, and the highest average rating wins, which can get tricky sometimes because one of my issues, honestly, with The Circle is that when you reach that phase, there's no like reason to actually honestly rate your fellow competitors. I just did it sheerly off strategy. Like I basically rated the people I thought were the least popular at the top and the most popular people at the bottom. It's sort of like a prisoner's dilemma where like, why would you actually rate the popular people high? Because then they're just going to win and they're going to beat you. So a lot of times in the seasons, the most popular player doesn't even win, which is a little bit weird, but it's always an interesting way. And when you get to the final five, all of the players come and like meet up with each other face to face, and which makes it interesting because on the show, like you said, you can because you never see the players, your profile can either be you or you could catfish as somebody else. So I catfished as my friend. Her real name's Marielle, but I chose the name Emily. Like I said, like this cute blonde sorority girl, which initially when I applied, that was not my plan. I was down for whatever. But when they first called me, we sort of said like, let's brainstorm. What do we think is going to give me the best chance of getting on? So catfishing, I think is a good move because you can kind of create like a narrative or a story. So I was like, if I want to be this super strategic player who's willing to like stab anybody in the back, why not just pretend to be like this sweet, innocent girl? And they sort of like threw that by me. And I'm in a fraternity, like I'm a frat kid, college kid. So that juxtaposition of seeing like a frat boy pretend to be a sorority girl was kind of hilarious. And even throughout the show, at one point I had to like flirt with this guy, and it was just like, it was so messy but super funny. But then not to spoil too much, but like you said, I got eliminated at some point in the show, and it was actually like a double elimination. So the person that also got eliminated, so when you get eliminated, you're allowed to go meet somebody who's still in the game face to face, and just you can confront them, or it could be someone that you really liked throughout the game. You like want to see if they're real and get to know them. So both of us two that got blocked were going to meet, our respective people, but they did it so that we actually met each other in a new apartment, and we became a new player and got a second chance in the game. So we became John, who is this like, so the only thing they gave us was a picture of this old man and with like a thick mustache and like, white hair, kind of looked like Santa. And his occupation on the profile had to be psychic, which was also funny because we had been in the game and knew the players, but they didn't know that we were the new person. We were sort of able to be like psychic and be like, oh, like this round, like what, like because we already knew information about them that they didn't think that we would know because they thought we were new players. So we sort of were able to do like some psychic stuff. But other than that, we completely got to build the profile. So we became this old dude named John. Obviously had to be psychic. We actually decided to play him as like an old gay man because we felt that like, in the circle, especially when there's like flirting sometimes and whatnot, like sometimes that the old man, like old straight man, could be considered like a little creepy, like, so to be like the old sweet gay man, he was like married for 38 years, had 3 kids, loved to do like improv and stuff like that. We were like, this is like the sweetest old man, like everyone's gonna love him, and people really did like him, and nobody actually was suspicious of him being a catfish, which was really good. So we played it pretty well. Oh, also we had access to a handful of his pictures aside from the one that they made our profile picture, and like 75% of them were him as like Santa Claus. So I guess like the real guy, he works as like a Santa part-time. So we added in our bio, we're like full-time psychic, part-time Santa. And it was just like it was such a wacky like combo of things, like old gay dude who's psychic but also dresses up as Santa and likes improv, and like it was so crazy that I think everyone just believed it because it would be so hard to make up. But you know, we did it. So I was playing two different people throughout the course of the game. Both Catfish was definitely a pretty crazy experience, and catfishing definitely adds a layer of complexity to the game, because if you're playing yourself, like you don't really have to worry about covering your own tracks or like lying to other players about who you even are. Like, of course you might lie to the other players about like, oh, I totally trust you. Like, you might not, but then to add on top of that, like having to, you know, talk in a way that's completely different to how you would normally talk, it's sort of like an extra layer of acting or deception. So it was pretty crazy.
So, like, one of the things that I know was that you and Chloe, who was, like, the actual person, were very, very close within the game.
Yeah.
But then both of you guys were flirting with Trevor. And then during, like, one of the challenges where they gave you, like, a mannequin head and you had to, like, put makeup on it, that was, like, the part where you struggled a little bit, and that became, like, a meme. So if you could just describe, like, what that challenge was and how it went, and, like, how you had to, like, kind of cover your tracks, that would be really cool.
Yeah, so this is, like... this was like maybe the highlight of the season, not for me, but just like for everybody else. And yeah, I guess there's some spoilers here, so if you haven't watched the show yet, feel free to go check it out. This episode particular is episode 7 of season 2, if you want to skip right to it, or you can go on YouTube. I think the clip is on there too. But basically, like I said, we do like little challenges, and there's not really like a particular prize, but a lot of the challenges are just like get to know the other players, but also, you know, for the catfish, you kind of have to be able to cover your own tracks. Because for another instance there was a girl who was playing as her husband, who, you know, in his profile picture had like a New York Yankees hat on, like she played him as very masculine. And there was a trivia challenge where she had to do a sports question that it had a picture of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, and the question was like, who are these 3 players? And she actually got it right. She like guessed that the last one was Scottie Pippen, but she got it right. But questions like that are sort of like meant to throw the catfish off. So, you know, watching the show, that's where you have to watch the catfish sort of navigate how to cover up their identities. So we had a similar one prior to that challenge where they gave us like a mannequin head and a bunch of like makeup products and stuff, and we had to make our mannequin head kind of look like our catfish and like make it look super glam and stuff, or not look like us, but for me, I was Emily, so I had to make the mannequin look like this like pretty girl, and I did not know the first thing about makeup. Like, I knew like the terms like foundation or like highlighter or contour, but I was like, I don't know what those actually mean. So it was just an absolute mess. My mannequin head was just horrible. Like, it just looked super ugly. So immediately, and all the other players saw a picture of our final product, and immediately, like, pretty much every player was like, "Oh, that's got to be a dude. Like, that's not something a sorority girl would do." And that was what led to me getting blocked the first time, because up to that point, I was doing pretty decent. But yeah, that was a disaster. And as it unfolded, I was like, it was such like a messy moment for me, because I was laughing at it, because I was like, I know when like people watch this, it's gonna be so funny. Like, this whole season I've been like very self-confident like in my strategy, like I've been playing a pretty good game, and then the thing that brings me down is like this stupid makeup challenge. So I was like laughing at that, but in the same moment I kind of knew when everybody like saw it. I didn't get their direct reactions, but like I could tell. They had a Jonathan Van Ness, who's on Netflix's show Queer Eye. He's like the makeup specialist. He was like the guest judge, so he like gave a rundown. And everybody else, he sort of was like, here's what you did well, and like, here's what you can improve on. And then mine was the last one he judged, and he basically was just like, this is just horrible. So as he was saying that, I was like, ugh. Like, I know I'm so screwed. And the way I kind of quantify is like, okay, I basically just lost the game. I basically just lost 100K. So I was like laughing, but I was also like crying, because I was like, this is just devastating. Like, damn it. So it was just such a crazy moment, but definitely a highlight of the show's history, I would say, that unfortunately I was on the wrong side of.
So what I'm gonna do right now is, for the people who are watching on YouTube, you'll actually be able to see the photo of like the mannequin head right here, and then the person that Jack was playing, which is right here. So it's like the photo that he submitted for the challenge. So for everybody watching on YouTube, you can obviously see that did not go very well, but I think that one of the other guys has a follow-up question, so you guys can go ahead.
Yeah. So like I just had a quick question, is that like, you're talking about all these different events and everything that happened. So like what was the time span, or what was the timeline like for recording the circle? Like when was it? Because like you mentioned that you started recording like in the middle of like 2020, and then it actually got published at the beginning or April of 2021.
So I flew out, so it films in Manchester in the UK. So I flew out there one of the last days of September 2020. And because of COVID, we had to do a 2-week quarantine when we got there, which was honestly like the worst part of the whole experience, because they didn't want us to have like much technology. Like they didn't want us to have our smartphones, because I guess, we could go on Tinder and search, like, because we all quarantined in Manchester, but in like different little like Airbnbs or apartments or whatever. And because they didn't want us to have like access to the internet or like social media, they took away a lot of technology. Like I brought my Xbox, so I was like, okay, if I'm here for like 2 weeks, maybe I'll play some Xbox. And they're like, theoretically, you could go on Tinder on your Xbox, and like, and the guy who was there, so I was there with like a guy who was sort of like helping move everything in, and then a girl who was like sort of on the production team, and she had to like call to see if I could keep my Xbox. And the guy who was helping me move, who was also like on the production team, was like, he was like, yeah, he should be able to keep it, like, he just wants to play COD, like, the new Warzone's out. And I was like, yeah, facts. And he's like, he doesn't even have a headset, like, he couldn't even talk to anybody. And I was like, this is also very true. But they gave him, like, a call to, like, the top dogs, and they're like, no Xbox. So literally it was just, like, me stuck in this apartment before the game for 2 weeks with, like, I had, like, an Amazon Fire Stick and like a Android like burner phone with parental controls on it, so I could like text my family, and I could like download like I actually downloaded like Pokemon ROMs and played like Pokemon Emerald all the way through, which actually kept me pretty entertained. But yeah, it was super boring. And then that ends. So I'm trying to think of the exact. I guess I got there. Whatever day I got there at the end of September was a Monday. So 2-week quarantine, I get out on a Monday 2 weeks later, and the first day I'm out, so they give you a, I guess you call it like a chaperone, who's like on the production team, who basically moves in with you until you get in the game, because, because of COVID, they didn't want us to go out and about, whereas in the first season, that wasn't really an issue, but because of and they obviously didn't want to make us, once we were done with our COVID quarantine, they didn't want us to just make us stay in the apartment. So the chaperone would like take us out for a walk. I guess we're basically like a dog. Like they would take us for walks and get some fresh air. But then obviously when it comes to actually going to the game, they need someone kind of with us to help us, like escort us to the facility, all of that stuff. But the chaperones, they try to match you up with a chaperone who's like, you're gonna get along with. So mine was this like 23-year-old British lad, like his name was Sam, super chill, like we had a great time. First day so that Monday when we got out of quarantine, the first thing I did was go to the studio where we record our our intro packages. So when everyone moves into the circle, you have like an intro package, which is probably like a minute and a half long, where it's like, hey, I'm Jack, I'm 21 years old, I'm coming to the circle playing as Emily because like I want to do this, that, and this, like I'm actually like a college student. So like, just basically just your background. Which the crazy thing is, when you film those, you still don't know if and when you're going to be on the show. So they filmed season 2 and season 3 back to back. So they flew out a bunch of people for season 2 and a bunch of people for season 3. But some of the people, they didn't know if they were going to be on season 2 or season 3 because, for example, I said they add people in throughout the season at random intervals. They can't really pre-plan who they want to add in, because say the first 3 people that go home are all girls, well, they're going to want to replace those people with more girls to keep the genders balanced. So they can't really pre-plan. So there was some people that were there for, so but basically when you film that intro package, you don't know if and when you're going to be on the show. So thankfully, I was picked for season 2 to be in the first 8. So I filmed that intro package on Monday, and and I moved into the circle on Friday, the same week. And then the show films for 2 weeks. Basically each episode's 1 day. But season 3 filmed right a few days after we wrapped up. So there were people that flew in and started quarantining on the same day I did, and had to hang out with their chaperone for like a month before season 3 started, or they got moved into season 3. And there were some people who flew out for like season 3 or season 2 and 3 who didn't get on either season and were out there for like over a month and had to fly back home and just didn't get on the show, which would have been absolutely brutal. As you could probably imagine, like the quarantine, like I said, was so boring. To be out there not doing a whole lot, 5-6 weeks, don't know if you're gonna get on the show, and then ultimately not, would definitely be, you know, super upsetting. So I'm super thankful that I got on. I was like the first person to get on. So that was the timeline. So basically I was there for 2-week quarantine, 4 days in between sort of getting ready for the show, and then 2 weeks filming the show.
Okay, so like now that we know a little bit like the whole process of actually recording like season 2 of The Circle, the question I have for you is that like how was it like going back to college after you filmed The Circle? Because you finished filming like late September or early October, but there was like this weird 5-month gap between when you finished recording and when it was actually released. So during that time, did you talk to your friends about the show, or like did they know where you were like during that September time? Like what was it like?
Yeah, it was definitely super weird. I mean, I got back on literally on Halloween. My fraternity was giving out bids that day, so I like went to like the ceremony. I obviously didn't know any of the kids because I'd been gone. So it was like literally like right back into like my normal college life. That night I went to a Halloween party with the girl I catfished as, who obviously knew I was there, because I had to like get her permission and everything. But then, yeah, the good thing was, because of The Circle, I had to take our school's on the quarter system. So I had to take that quarter off because obviously while we were filming The Circle, I couldn't be like sitting there doing my like math homework. I had to like be fully focused. So when I got back to school, I didn't have any like academic responsibilities. So honestly, that was super nice because I was living the college life without having to worry about school, which is like maybe one of the most fun things you can do. But yeah, the transition, it almost felt like when I got back that the last month was just like a fever dream. You know what I mean? Like, especially even The Circle itself, it's kind of like Black Mirror-esque in the sense like you're alone in your apartment. You're not really meeting a lot of people. Like you get like a day after the show ends to like chill with everybody. But like at this point, you still really don't know them super well because you barely saw them. And we're recording the show. We're basically alone the whole time, with like cameras on us all the time. So it's just like in no other world is that sort of situation happening. So all of a sudden I'm back in like normal society, and it's like, did that really just happen? Like, and there's like no evidence of it. A few of my friends knew, like close friends that I could trust not to say anything. But most other people just like didn't know where I was. So I would just like make stuff up. And then we had winter break. And well, at this time, we finished filming at the end of October. Every indication sort of was like the show was going to come out like right at the start of the new year, because that's what happened with season 1. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to wait for like 2 months. Like, that's not horrible. And we had like holiday break and stuff. And then like at the start of December, they started saying like, oh, it's getting pushed back. So then I come back to school in January for our winter quarter, and I still don't know when it's coming out. And then sort of towards the end of that, so I do like a normal quarter as a student, and then sort of towards the end of the quarter, they tell us it's going to come out like the beginning of April. So then I'm on spring break in Cancun with my friends, and they drop like the trailer and stuff. But the trailer was like, the first trailer they dropped was like super like low key. Like they wanted to make it so that you couldn't identify like who's actually on the show. So they'd show like these little snippets. So nobody even at that point knew I was on the show. But then when they dropped like the cast, they dropped like a teaser, and then when I was on spring break, I actually got COVID. So then I got back to Chicago, tested positive, had a quarantine for 10 days, and within that 10 days was when they dropped the cast and they dropped the like trailer, all of that. So my last 3 days of COVID, I was just like sitting there like watching, you know, people start to follow me or people just like freaking out about it, but I was also still in my room, so I like couldn't see anybody. So it was just really trippy. And then the show came out. I spent some of the time in LA for like the finale and stuff like that. And then I moved out to LA shortly after for the summer, which was very nice. So show aired April 14th, finished May 5th, and then I moved out May 9th. And I spent about 2 weeks during the season out in LA. So I wasn't in Chicago that much. I'll be honest, when I was glad to get out to LA, because right when the show was airing was obviously like the biggest boom of everything. And it was pretty weird to be like a college student. Because I just thought like a lot of people like didn't really know how to like react to it. Like my friends and stuff, or kids I guess acquaintances, like my friends were always chilling, like they're always cool. But you know, eventually it would get kind of old when like everywhere I go on like every party, like people have like the same comments to make or they'll think they're being like, I don't, it's like they think it's friendly, but everyone's like, oh, like you're so famous now, and it's like I don't know what I'm not gonna be like, yeah, like, and I'm really not. So it's like there would be a lot of weird encounters, whereas in LA it's pretty normalized, you know. So getting that change of pace and also getting to spend a lot of time with my cast out here in LA was super dope. And then coming back to school this fall from LA, at first I was a little anxious just because I felt like I was really like getting a life going out here, and to go back and like take classes that at this point like this fall I took like Spanish 101. So preparing for that, I was like, I just lived like a craziest summer of my life in LA, and now I'm gonna be back in like Spanish 101 with like freshmen. It was such a weird switch up, but honestly like it worked out pretty well. Like I had a good quarter, handled my academics well, had a lot of fun. Having turned 21 over the summer, I was now able to enjoy the city of Chicago even more in terms of like nightlife and stuff like that. So yeah, things have been going well with all that. It's definitely a crazy ride. Definitely changes life up a lot, but at the same time, like I'm still sort of the same person I was at the end of the day. I like to do the same thing. So yeah, definitely super blessed with how it all shook out. And I like to live life fast. So just the craziness that came with the show always keeps things exciting, and you know, life still is super exciting. I don't know where things are going to go from here. Obviously some of the hype or whatever from the show has of course died down, but hoping for some more opportunities, and honestly just very grateful to like have the platform that I have now. It's not anything crazy, but to have so many people that sort of like follow along with my journey and have an interest in what I do, and where I could like go on my Instagram story and just say like silly stuff or like just mess around and people enjoy it and like it. Like the biggest compliment I get these days are people like friends or just random people be like, yo, I love your Instagram stories. They're like the best ones out there. Like I watch them religiously. I'm like, that means so much to me because that's just me doing my daily life, and the fact that you are engaged with that is so awesome. So yeah, it's been really crazy, I guess.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that gives us a really good base off of, for the listeners who are listening, like as we mentioned, the Devin Leo's podcast, the voice actor from Mighty Med, his would have released a few days before this. And we asked him the same question about like kind of the peer pressures or that he faced from being on a TV show at such an early age. So I think they'll be able to kind of compare and contrast your experiences as like a university student and how like other university students kind of perceived you from being on a reality TV show versus him as kind of like an 11-year-old or a 13-year-old or whatever. And the not exactly the backlash, but like the peer perception that he would have faced.
Yeah, 100%. And I even imagine at a younger age, because, you know, 13, 14, that's like early high school or middle school even. And speaking from experience, that's the time when everyone's like the most insecure version of themselves. And so, like someone is crushing it and they're like acting, voice acting, whatever, like now I feel even more insecure. So a lot of times the natural response is to be like, you know what, like screw that person, like whatever, like just to kind of minimize it so that you don't feel bad. But in reality, for any like high school or middle schoolers out there, it's like you're doing your thing too, you know, just because someone's, you know, doing some acting doesn't invalidate what you're doing. And I truly believe like everyone if they're putting the right effort in, you're going to have the time where you're going to shine, whether that's like career wise, you know, if you want to be on television, things like that. So right now I had this like little boom, but I'm sure like friends of mine years from now are going to be, you know, running like $1 million companies, and I'm just going to be like kicking it. I'm going to be like, all right, who like really won at the end of the day? So everyone, if you put the work in, is going to have a great opportunity. It's just the timeline for everybody's a little bit different.
Definitely, yeah. And you also talked about like your Instagram stories and how you kind of almost make it a vlog in a way. And when Nitin actually originally reached out to you about coming on this podcast, one of the topics we wanted to talk about was social media. And we think, as you mentioned with your Instagram stories, that you handle social media really well because you implement it in a way that still makes it entertaining for your like viewers and your fans, but also you kind of balance it by not doing like constant endorsements or sponsorships like other influencers do, and like causing, for example, a lot of like those tend to cause like a lot of depression or like other anxiety problems among teenagers. So could you talk a little bit more about that, you know, some of the negative impacts of excess social media use and how you kind of approach social media?
No, that's a great question, because, you know, before the show, I used social media just like anybody else. I was on it a good amount, but I wasn't really posting anything on Instagram. I wasn't putting out stories. I would post even now, I'm not a huge fan of like getting pictures. Like if I'm out with people, like for my for my personal self, my page, etc., like I should be getting pictures, but I'm always like, yo, I don't want to kill this moment or like kill the vibes by being like, yo, like let's get a picture. Like I just think it's weird. So, you know, especially before I even had followers, like that was never a priority. So I'd maybe post something like once every 3 months just because I somehow get a good picture from like an event. But yeah, after now it's like it's tough. You have to like figure out I just try to keep it like authentic, you know what I mean? A lot of influencers right now, it's like, you know, the hottest people. But for me, I don't feel like my following was based on like being outstandingly attractive. Like I do all right, fellas, but like, yeah, that's not like what what drew people to me. That's not why I got cast on The Circle. Like The Circle will pick some hotties. I was not one of their hotties. I felt like I was like the comedic relief, someone that people could relate to, and I valued that. Like that meant a lot to me. That like my personality was what got me on the show. So for like Instagram, for example, I always just try to keep it real. Like obviously it's fun to post like pictures where you look good, and like that's what my feed is, but the story is sort of for that, like the stories I feel like are where that personality especially could really show out. Or yeah, it's like I just keep it honest. I'm very blunt and like sarcastic. Like I love doing like Q&As on my story, for example, or like giving people advice. And like I think a lot of influencers or whatever kind of want to seem like overwhelmingly positive, right? Like if someone's like, oh, like I'm like this happened in my relationship, they're gonna be like, oh, like don't worry about it, like you go girl, you got this. Whereas I'll just be like, I don't want to like curse. Can I curse on here or no? Yeah, I'll just be like, yo, what the fuck are you thinking, dude? Like this, like what are you like? Just try to keep it real. Always appreciate connecting with like my audience too. Like people DM me, I usually just check the DMs. Like it's hard to answer all of them, but sometimes I'll just see someone, just like a couple hundred followers, like say something like that they think I'm never gonna see, and then I'll respond and be like, yo, what's up? Like appreciate you, and just having that connection. But to your point with the negatives, I think when the show first aired, I think was sort of the epitome of the negative side of social media, at least for me. And honestly, from the show, relatively speaking, compared to like some of my castmates, I didn't get a whole lot of hate. Like people generally liked me, and on your personal social media pages especially, it's much less frequent that someone's gonna be on there hating on you, because it's like that takes a certain level of effort and a certain level of like being a bad person to be like, all right, I'm watching the show, Ayusha's on the show, you know what, let me go DM him about how I don't like him. Like, it's just, what's the point of that? Like, and people do that. And for me, it wasn't a ton, But like Courtney and Savannah from my season, for example, who I'm very close with, would have people on their timeline just being like literally on their posts commenting just like, you suck, like I hate, like that's terrible. And then to kind of exacerbate that, for me, where I experience the most negativity is like when the show first comes out, especially as a fan of these shows, as someone who's wanted to do this for a long time, I wanted to see what people thought. And that's a very natural human reaction. You want to see what people think of you, whether it's good or bad. So I'd go on Reddit, I'd go on Twitter, and I'd search up like the circle Jack or the circle Emily, and like 9 out of 10 comments are going to be like super positive, but then you see the one comment in the bunch that is like very negative, and that is like kind of what stings, and it hits it's much more impactful than, you know, the good comments. Because I think now I actually talked to some people, other friends from reality TV about this, people who had struggled with this too, where just it's sort of human nature to naturally look for like the negative feedback about yourself, because from like a survival standpoint, like when we lived in like tribes and stuff, if your tribe doesn't like you, like you're gonna get like kicked out or whatever. So you need to see the negative stuff and adapt, but at the same time, our mind is not wired to be receiving the negativity from just like thousands of people on Twitter that don't know how we really are. You know what I mean? So some of the negative comments I'd completely just laugh off, because they'd be like so negative, but like so unbelievable and like untrue, that like I'd just be like, this is not even true. But honestly, the ones that would hurt the most are the ones that were like a little bit accurate. You know what I mean? Like if you think about yourself, there's like maybe there's like 1 or 2 things about how you look or whatever that you're like not fully confident with. You're like, you know, maybe my teeth could be a little whiter, shit like that. And then if you see someone on Twitter being like, oh, like, you know, you're pointing out those like minor flaws, however minor they are, but then you're like, oh, that's true, like, oh, I feel so bad about it now. Like stuff like that would happen. And initially that was like the worst right when the show started, especially because as my Instagram was growing in those first days, I'd be receiving like, or I'd be gaining like hundreds to thousands of followers a day. And at first my mindset was like, all right, I need to like see everyone who follows me, like respond to every DM, because like I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. Like I want to make the fans' day by like responding to them. Or it's like, I don't know, like what if Instagram, unfortunately, there's not really a way to like filter through your followers. So I was like, what if some like super famous person follows me and I want to see that? I want to be able to see that and make that connection. But at some point it literally just becomes impossible. Like just so difficult to do unless you want to dedicate like 3 hours of your day scrolling through like who follows you. Like there's no point. So I think basically the day after the show came out, I was still trying to do that. And obviously people have been following me for like a week or so before because of like the teaser and all that. So I have been keeping up with it. But the day after the show came out, I was like hungover, which is always always bad for like anxiety stuff. Just like sitting in the car so hungover, like trying to like, and at this point I still have like all my notifications on and everything, and like every 5 seconds would be like buzz. I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. I just like muted all my notifications for like Instagram, Snapchat, like TikTok, and eventually, and then it was so much nicer. And then I also kind of started cutting out like how much I'd go on like Reddit or Twitter, because with Reddit stuff for like Survivor, I'll go on the Survivor Reddit just to see what like people are thinking about the season or about an episode, and that's sort of what I was doing with the Circle. And then I'd stumble across a comment that'd be like, "Yo, Jack sucks." I'd be like, "Wait, that's about me." Like, damn it. So cutting that stuff out, and then Instagram and Snapchat and like TikTok, very positive for me overall, but just kind of putting myself in a position where it's like, all right, if I have some free time right now and I want to go on Instagram, then I'll go on and I'll check my messages. I'll check like comments, but I don't want it like constantly reminding me every minute that I have to like go look at something. Because, you know, phones are designed to like grab your attention and make you go click into your phone and make you go on these apps like for the company's financial sake. So just to mute some of them was definitely a huge relief.
So I like that you mentioned about how you're like really close with the people who you were with on the Circle, and like it just kind of goes to show that like social media does have good effects, because there's some good effects, like you were, even though you weren't like on a real social media network, you were just sort of like in a game, it was still like sort of social media, and you were able to make really good friends out of it. And even like you were meeting people from season 1 who are currently live in LA and stuff like that. So could you like quickly go into that? And then my second question is, when you got casted with Lisa in like the second chance, the height difference is something that everybody was commenting about, because you're like like way above 6 foot, and she's around, she's like in the
Like
maybe
I'm like 6'5", 6'6", and she's like 5'1", 5'2". So
yeah.
there was that one picture straight from the show where we were standing next to each other, and the camera angle was like messed up. So in frame, I was like this, like my head was completely cut off, and she was like right here. And they like left that in the show, so the picture of that was just like such a meme. But yeah, Lisa was great. Living with her was awesome. Sorry, what was the first question?
Yeah, just like if you could just talk a little bit about how like the circle had an impact on your life, because you obviously had time where like you could hang out with the people from the first season. You just made a lot of new friends and like connections out of it. Just like the positive effects of the circle, because we obviously went through the negative effects. You can just go through some of like the best moments that you've had on the circle and like outside of the circle, just the benefits that it's had as a whole.
Yeah, I just think when you look at the circle or like a lot of other reality TV shows, they want to cast fun people. So the circle family in general is just a lot of people that I would want to hang out with anyways, just people that are a good time to have around. And then you add in the fact that you've had this shared experience, that right now only about 35 people can really relate to. Like, you meet someone who's had that experience that you've had, you're immediately just like, yo, like you get it, like we're locked in, and they're just naturally fun people. Like, when you get the chance to hang out with them, you're gonna have a good time. And I do think because the circle's such a new show, relatively only been 3 seasons, I think the mindset in season 1 did a good job of really establishing this, thanks to them, is when we see a new season coming out, we want to go show those people love, show them support, help them through like the craziness that's about to unfold. So we'll shoot them messages, whatever, and that'll just naturally kind of bring people closer. And it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of like hanging out. Like, as a new season comes out, like their whole cast is obviously like celebrating. There'll be like watch parties in LA, things like that. So that's always a good reason or excuse for the whole cast to get together. Right now, it's been a few months since the season's come out, so it hasn't been as much like buzz going on, but I still have a few, close friends from the circle that I see whenever I have the chance. So, I mean, those relationships that I've gained from that, and honestly, the people that I've met through those relationships, like Mitch is one of my closest friends in LA, and now I have friends, like a lot of my friends in LA that I hang out with like independently, I initially met through Mitch. So those connections can't be like exaggerated enough. Like those are some of my closest friends. We joke about it sometimes where it's like kind of culty. Like, we'll just like, when the seasons are coming out, we're always like doing dinner stuff and then hanging out. And it is kind of funny that it's just like circle family, like let's all get together, but it's definitely a good time. And yes, each new season there's just so many cool people to meet. It's super, and I know some ramblings about season 4, season 5, because it was already filmed. Put some puzzle pieces together myself to figure out a few people that are on there. Haven't talked to them a whole lot yet, but like I'm just like seeing the next wave of people, and I'm so excited to finally get to know them, because I know we're gonna make some great memories together, and just like haven't had that opportunity yet.
Yeah, that's great. And like, I think one of the questions we can ask to like wrap up this podcast is like maybe what you want to do in the future. Like, obviously reality or acting on or not even acting, being on a reality TV show, it's a lot different than actually like acting on a show, because like you were saying in the beginning, you're just being yourself and you just want to like portray yourself. But like, when you're acting, you want to portray that character that you're trying to act in. So like, would you ever want to like maybe do acting in the future, or do you think like you would have the skill set to do it, considering you're on a reality TV show?
Yeah, you really just kind of encapsulated my thought process, right? Because reality TV, it's like just being yourself. It doesn't, like, obviously you like yourself has to be good for reality TV, but it doesn't take like particular skill. But acting, you have to be like you have to have at least some skill. And I've done a little bit of like stuff in the past. Like in high school, I did improv, like even like middle. Like I don't have a great acting skill set, but I do think that is something I want to explore. I'm hoping when I finish up school, settle down in LA, I want to take acting classes, and do some work on the side just to keep some money, like sustain myself. I don't want to go like I don't want to go. I like to take calculated risks. So becoming a full-fledged actor is a hard process and something that a lot of people struggle with. So I want to obviously shoot my shot with that a little bit and just see if it's there for me. I also think I'm honest enough with myself where if I'm taking some classes and going to some auditions for like 2-3 months and nothing's sticking, I think I'll be able to be honest with myself and be like, all right, maybe this isn't for me, and then pivot. But that definitely is something I want to do. Obviously, another reality show I would totally do, but being on screen doing acting or doing some sort of comedy stuff like would be so fun. Like, I mean, that's the dream. So I'm like, that's like kind of a dream for anybody. So for me, it's like, why not? I have this great opportunity. Why not like shoot my shot for a little bit? And I'm so like grateful and privileged to be able to have like the means to do that, right? Because some people, it's like they'd love to do that, but they have to get they have to work 2 jobs to like support their family. So luckily I have the opportunity to be able to try and do that. My mind honestly goes so all over the place with some of this stuff where I'm like, what do I want to do? Like, there's so many things I'm interested in. Like, what do I want to commit to? So I'm doing that, or hopefully doing that. Obviously, still finishing up school. I may start like doing some streaming, like video games. I like gaming, so I'm like, why not just let people watch me play video games and make some money and like connect with my audience? And then, like I said, eventually, unless something crazy happens, when I'm 30 or when I'm 40, I'm not going to be like an actor. I'm not going to be like an influencer. So I eventually want to get into, the talent, the business side of like talent or sports or entertainment. My battery is getting low. Should I just plug it in real quick?
Yeah, no worries.
There we go. I may just I'll just sit right here. This is like, but yeah. Sorry, let's resume.
Great. So essentially, as we wind down this podcast, we always end with our infamous tips question, where we essentially ask the guests, what tips do you have for the high schoolers watching this episode? For the high schoolers who maybe want to get on a reality TV show of their own, or high schoolers who want to go into something that you're doing, like business or econ or some of the sort. Because actually what you mentioned there about how you're kind of like trying to pursue like this reality TV and this acting career at an early age and then kind of moving into business is something that a lot of people do. For example, I remember Andrew Luck, who's like quarterback for Indianapolis. He was obviously playing quarterback for a while, and then after he got old, he had his business degree, so he was able to go into business and kind of continue his career. So similar to what you're doing. So if you have any tips for high schoolers trying to do something similar, what would they be?
Yeah, I would just say for people in general, and then especially for like high school, college kids, which is maybe like one of the most formative times in your life, my advice and sort of what I try to live by is if you're presented in some sort of opportunity or experience, where sort of basically if you're presented some sort of opportunity or new experience or whatever, I always just say like, go give it a try. If the alternative is like sitting at home and chilling for a day, like watching TV, you're not gonna get anything out of that. So whatever the best experience you could go participate in, because sometimes you might have a couple and then you have to pick and you like weigh the pros and the cons, but like each experience you have, whether that's like with new friendships or relationships or like job opportunities, even if there's a negative, even if it's overall a negative experience, there's going to be things you could take away from that. So if I do something and I don't have a great time, like, yeah, it sucks. Maybe in hindsight, I wish I didn't do it, but you're going to know going forward, like sort of red flags to look out for. Like after my freshman year, I worked as a financial analyst at like a nonprofit, and it was so boring. And that's sort of maybe pushed me even more to be like, all right, I don't want to work like a 9-to-5 like finance job. A lot of my friends are like, most kids in my fraternity just end up at like the major banks doing like financial like finance. And I now know that I don't want to do that, which sure, was it a boring summer of like internship to come to that conclusion? Yeah. But if I didn't do that then maybe a part of me now would be like, all right, I'm looking for a full-time job. Maybe I'll work in finance, and then I'd get a full-time gig and be in finance, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm in the real world, I need money, so I can't quit, but I'm like, okay, I'm not happy with this, and that just makes it 10 times harder. So having those experiences, even if they're negative, you're going to be able to take away and learn from them. And then to sort of compare, to sort of like fit that in with, like, I guess reality TV, for example. If I was a casting person for reality TV, and I know a few, like, I've gone through it with Survivor, I've gone through it with The Circle, like, I feel like I'm fairly tapped into, like, what makes, like, a good applicant. If I'm a casting person, I want to look for someone with a lot of experience, like life experience, who's doing fun things. And not to say that you should, like, live your life to get on a reality TV show, but the experiences that you might have that are sort of conducive to getting on a show, right? If you have this like crazy job opportunity that you accept, or you like have crazy hobbies that are super fun, that's what makes you an exciting applicant. If you're like obviously this isn't for everyone, but you could be like if you work in like the fashion, if you work in like the business side of the fashion industry and you like love to surf and travel, like, that's like a hook, you know what I mean? Whereas if you're like, and not to say that people should be like, right, not to say you should. All right, let me rewind. If you're like a computer programmer who like just like they like live for their job, right? They like, you don't have a lot of hobbies. You're sort of, even if you kind of enjoy the job, which is fine in general, but if you're thinking about it from like a reality TV standpoint, you need to like diversify your life a little bit. You could be a computer programmer who at night loves to go out and party and like be crazy, or like loves to travel, right? And then that's like a fun hook. Basically just allow yourself to have the most experiences possible, because whether they're good or bad, you're going to take something away from it and learn more, and it's going to improve all of your experiences going forward, I guess, is how I would kind of wrap that sort of advice up.
Okay, yeah, I think that's really good advice for like, even for like our high schoolers who like really want to like understand how exactly reality TV works, because Rishi kept on thinking that like the whole show was fake and it was like acting. I'm like telling him it's real life. He did this for 2 weeks in real life. It's not like acting. So thank you so much, Jack, for the time. This is probably my favorite episode so far, just because I'm like able to meet somebody that I saw on TV. So thank you so much for your time. Course, and yeah, thank you so much for everybody who listened.
Last, I guess, to wrap up that advice, it's like especially for high schoolers in particular, like, don't be afraid to try new things. Like I said earlier, high school is a time where kind of everyone's sort of finding themselves, and it could be kind of a toxic space in some ways, but trust me, when you get to college, it kind of just resets. So do what makes you happy and find what makes you happy and sort of who you are in high school. And like, yeah, you might not be like the most popular, but it really doesn't matter. Like once you get to college, it's just a whole new like dynamic. Like, high school me is so much different than college me, even comparing like senior year of high school versus freshman year of college. Just because when I got to college, I think I was comfortable enough with myself that I immediately found a great crowd of friends, and it's been just a phenomenal time. So I would just say, yeah, don't live your life trying to be the cool kids in high school. Live your life just being confident with yourself, have fun with your friends, whatever, and then you'll get to college, you'll be ready to go.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Jack, and thank you so much for everybody who listened. Thank you so much. That's our show for today. Now roll the credits. High School Not So Much a Musical is hosted by Ayush Agarwal, Nitin Jaladanki, and Rishi Sinha. Narration by Samhit Padala. Music from Louis Luang Relaxation Cafe, Tune Pocket, and Infraction. If you like the show, please recommend it to your friends and family. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.